Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'll be reading Matthew chapter 9 at the ESV version of the Bible, so read along if you want. Alright, this chapter starts out with the story of Jesus heals a parabolic. And getting into a boat, he crossed over and came to his own city. And behold, some people brought to him a paralytic, lying on a bed. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, my son, your sins are forgiven." And behold, some of the scribes said to themselves, "This man is blaspheming." But Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, "Why do you think evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Rise and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He then said to the paralytic, "Rise, pick up your bed and go home." And he rose and went home. When the crowd saw it, they were afraid, and they glorified God, who had given such authority to men. Alright, that story is just kind of talking about, I think, just more faith of people in Jesus' time and people who were in opposition to that. But yeah, I mean, I remember this story growing up a lot. I don't know why, but I just think it's interesting seeing that Jesus would forgive him of his sins first and then tell him to get up and walk. But he's also setting an example that forgiving sins comes first over just telling somebody to go walk. Alright, the next story is called Jesus Calls Matthew. And Jesus passed on from there. He saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and the sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Alright, well, that story is just kind of saying that sinners and like tax collectors, I guess, are in need of Jesus, because people who are already good wouldn't need him. People who want to seek him, who want to be good, who are already bad, need Jesus. Alright, the next story is called A Question About Fasting. When the disciples of John came to him, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guests mourn along as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one puts a piece of unshrunken cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But the new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." I guess this is just kind of saying that the disciples don't need to fast yet. It's not something they need to do. It's not important for them to be preserved, as in the wine metaphor. I guess kind of like in the garments metaphor. They're just kind of saying, like, don't do anything too fast, because I guess kind of like can't teach old dog new tricks. You know, you gotta know why it's important and what it's for before you can even do that, because his disciples are not perfect. So he's trying to teach them why fasting is important eventually. Alright, the next story is called A Girl Restored to Life and a Woman Healed. When he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus rose and followed him and his disciples. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, "If only I touch his garment, I will be made well." Jesus turned and seeing her said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. And when Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But then the crowd had been put outside. He went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went through all the district. Alright, this one's pretty simple. I guess it's just kind of expressing more of Jesus's like goodness and great deeds he's done. Nothing too much. I think it's kind of important that it was reported throughout all the district, like in verse 26. But otherwise, I think it's pretty straightforward. And the next story is called Jesus Heals Two Blind Men. And as Jesus passed on from there, two blind men followed him, crying aloud, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, be it done to you." And their eyes were opened. And Jesus sternly warned them, "See that no one knows about it." But they went away and spread his fame through all the district. Okay, well, that story seemed to show more of like maybe I don't know, that just seemed to be more of like people who want to be healed rather than want to seek Jesus, because they literally didn't listen to what Jesus said even though they believed in him. I don't know, not too much to that, I guess, but still I see the importance of it. The next story is called Jesus Heals a Man Unable to Speak. As they were going away, behold, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him. And when the demon had been cast out, the mute man spoke, and the crowds marveled, saying, "Never was anything like this seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He casts out demons by the prince of the demons." Right, that story seems to be more of just saying the Pharisees don't like him. Just again, that's probably a pretty common theme, but I mean, they're literally calling him a demon, so I feel like it's the worst so far. Right, the next story is called "The Harvest is Plentiful, the Laborers Few." And Jesus went through all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Okay, so that story is kind of saying, just like Jesus is the shepherd, God is the shepherd of the people, because the harvest is good, as in like his works are good, but the laborers are few, as in the people who want to worship him are few. But when you pray to him, that shows Jesus that not only you want to be a laborer for him, but you want more people to be laborers for him. Of course, there's more that goes into that, but that's at least what I believe this is trying to say. That finishes up chapter 9. Pretty good one. I think expanding even more on what Jesus does and really diving into his acts. Like more than half the stories are just about him healing people, which is pretty straightforward, but they all seem to have another message with them. Like, for example, the first one with the paralytic, that one's saying, again, the Pharisees don't like him, but also it's easy to forgive. The one with the girl who was restored to life and the women healed, that was another one of just people doubting him. Like they just laughed at him when he said the girl was asleep, but he still woke her. And then that went throughout all the district as well. The blind men story seemed to be more of a fake faith. People who just believe, people just want what they want from Jesus, but not to follow him because they just outright disobeyed Jesus. Next one was Jesus healing a man who's unable to speak. That one is, again, the Pharisees just really doubling down on they hate Jesus, because of course they would. Like Jesus is their opposition. Jesus is the new faith of what they have. Jesus is taking away their power. With the other stories, though, of Jesus calling Matthew, question about fasting, and harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few, those are all seem to be about his followers, and even like mostly the ones who need help. Like in the first one with Jesus calls Matthew, those ones are that one's pretty much literally saying what I'm saying with these bad people need help. So those are the people that are going to follow Jesus. And like in verse 13, when it says, "Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but the sinners." When the Pharisees are confused on why there's only tax collectors and sinners following him, Jesus gives them this "I desire mercy, not sacrifice" to think about. Of course, they probably won't because they don't care. But like that literally means he wants people to be merciful for each other, just like he is. He wants people to be, in a very like layman's terms, he wants people to be forgiving of each other and not a sacrifice. He doesn't need people to go and sacrifice anything of their lives to make their lives better for him. They just, they need to be forgiving of one another. Simply, probably more that goes into that, but simply put, I feel like that's a good explanation of it. And then the story about fasting, that one is just saying, why do the Pharisees fast but not Jesus' disciples? And it kind of explains earlier, but again, it's just kind of, they're not ready for it. I mean, that's what I get from it. Maybe I can look that up. Let me look it up. Okay, so what I just looked up is just kind of saying fasting was a very religious aspect of Jewish culture. So them not doing it was very confusing, but what it was saying is, especially with the bridegroom example, is that Jesus is the bridegroom and all his disciples are the attendants. So they're going to celebrate Jesus being there now and feast with him. But there will come a time where they need to fast. But right now is not that time because Jesus is here with them now. So they're going to have a good time with Jesus. And then the last one, I kind of said what I wanted to with that. I don't know, I think that's pretty straightforward, especially with the verse 36 when he says, he saw the crowds and had compassion for them because they're harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Like they just seem to be very unorganized, in that sense. And then when he says the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, that seems to be just Jesus is good. What he puts out in the world is good. But the people who receive that, the people who want to harvest that are few. So him saying to pray earnestly and send out laborers is to send out more people to harvest the Lord's work. I think that'll wrap it up there, though. Good chapter. I think it's actually probably one of the better ones so far. A lot of Jesus's acts, so I liked it. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you in the next one.